you could see where we were sitting on. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. Anyways, so we'll go ahead and start this review. So, do you wanna tell the story about what the Justice League is about without giving any spoilers away?
Okay, yes, I can tell you the story of what Justice League is about. Shortly after the events of Batman versus Superman, we see the world as grieving the loss of Superman. And as we grieve Superman, a threat takes that moment as an opportunity to strike. Now that he feels the lone threat to him is now gone, and he's come to Earth looking for what are known as
Mother boxes.
And as Wonder Woman's pride describes them, they do not contain power. They are power. So Batman sees this as a threat he cannot fight alone. So he seeks out the others that we have seen him seek out in Batman versus Superman when he got the hard drive. He seeks them all out in an attempt to help him fight this threat from another place. I can't really describe where it's from.
Right. I mean, his name is Steppenwolf, right?
Steppenwolf.
And he's like below somebody that's much bigger than him, right? We saw him a little bit in the movie.
In the movie universe, I think he's Steppenwolf's nephew. Not Steppenwolf's nephew, but in the movie universe, I think they're alluding to the fact that he's a certain someone's nephew.
Right.
But in the comic books, he's that certain someone's uncle.
Okay.
So they changed his lineage up a little bit to make him seem more, so the bigger threat is still in the background.
And we'll talk about that part in
the spoiler
spoilers.
review. That's why I'm trying to be vague about it now.
Good job about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anyways, now we're going to talk about what we liked about this movie. What I liked about this movie was the pacing. We knew going in that this was supposed to be. I mean, this was mandated anyway. Not before the production when it should have been. This was mandated right somewhere around the reshoot time. 2 hours. Make a 2-hour movie. Bad time to do it, but they did it. They made a really decent 2-hour movie. In DC standards, anyway.
Yeah.
So, for DC standards, this was a good movie.
This is the next best movie since Wonder Woman.
It didn't have a lot of that extra baggage that you got in Batman versus Superman.
No.
And you didn't get... what I also liked about it was the tone.
Yes.
The tone was a lot brighter. I liked that it was little bit more comedic than anything that they've ever made.
Yes.
Because there was a lot of funny moments in Wonder Woman.
Let's refine that comment.
Intentionally
comedic.
Yes, intentionally comedic funny.
Suicide Squad was funny, but they really did that, didn't they? Kind of way.
So, yeah, there was a lot of light moments for this, and the overall tone of it was not quite as dark and gloomy.
It wasn't grimdark just for the sake of being grimdark because it was different from what the other guys are doing.
Yes.
It actually made sense.
Right.
But then I also have something that's a positive and a negative.
Okay.
I like the nostalgia of this movie.
Oh, that's a good point. It did feel like a little bit of a throwback. Especially the Gotham. I liked the way the Gotham looked.
I'm not even referring to those moments, but those were cool moments too. I was talking more of the use of the Danny Elfman and John Williams.
Oh yes, the way the throwback music that they did.
I thought that was cool to add those
everybody's
elements.
original themes.
Add those original elements back to this movie, but I also considered it a negative because it took you bringing those elements back to make me enjoy this movie a little more instead of striking out on your own.
Right, and also I liked every character. I liked every Justice League character that we were introduced
Justice League
to.
character, yes.
So I liked Ezra Miller as the Flash. I liked what's his name?
Ray Fisher as Cyborg.
Cyborg, yes.
And it's a shock that I didn't think I was going to do it, and it also makes sense why Thor Ragnarok was the way it was. Now, Jason Momoa was Aquaman.
Yes, he was so cool.
Yes. I thought that was very clever how they played him like he was like a man of two worlds, which he is.
Right, he is. So he was a lot more of a. I thought he was going to be more like a leader where he's at, but he's more of a lone wolf.
Yeah.
Where he's at. Because I thought he was more like a king or something.
He grows into that role.
Right. So he's more of like an outcast to where he's from.
Yeah, he's more the outcast. Cause like you said, he's more
Atlantis.
He's of two worlds. He's half human, half Atlantean.
Right, and nobody else down there is that way.
No.
Apparently. Not from the looks of it anyway.
That's why he's kind of angry at his mom because he lived most of his life on the land.
Right. So, I thought he was Jason Momoa was absolutely amazing as Aquaman. That was perfect casting there.
Mm-hmm. It was a very different take for Aquaman that I do enjoyed it. And it actually, I did a lot of things that were pretty cool with his mythos too.
Yes.
Then we'll get more into that in the spoiler review.
Right. And Gal Gadot,
Wonder Woman, she
knocked it out of the park as Wonder Woman. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she's a really good Wonder Woman.
She was such a good. She was a lot like the leader of the group in this sort of.
And I think that was an actual focal point in the movie at one point.
Right. And what was that? Nothing. Oh, it's the remote turned off.
Okay.
So, anyways,
thought the stream shut off again.
My phone went into lock mode.
Okay, that's fine.
So, anyways, back to the story. And Ben Affleck as Batman, we cannot forget to mention that.
He did it again.
Did it again. He was a really good Batman.
He was a really
good. Obviously, what a major, almost blaring. I don't know if this isn't a spoiler necessarily because it didn't happen in this movie. One of the things that happened in Batman vs. Superman that was really shocking and it was a big change for his character was that he kills people, whereas pretty much nobody dies.
Yeah.
Really. He doesn't kill anybody, and he doesn't seem to even have that arc about him in this story.
Like the Batman vs. Superman changed Batman brought Batman back to what we know as Batman.
And if that was supposed to be a change for Batman Batman in that for his character in Batman vs. Superman, you would have thought that there would have been a little bit of something mentioned about it in the movie, and that did not happen.
No.
But I mean, that's not necessarily a negative. It's just something I want to point out.
Yeah, they really didn't bring up what he did in Batman vs. Superman all that much.
Right. So, which is to go. I don't want to go ahead and move into the negatives yet. So, because I still have a lot of positive things.
Yeah.
The one you've already mentioned, the music was really cool. What was I going to say? I liked the way that when I mentioned the pacing earlier, this felt like pretty much every scene in the movie pretty much didn't feel like they were going over 2 minutes. Like you'd go 2 minutes here, next part, 2 minutes here, next part, and 2 minutes here, next part.
I like that. I like that they did that, but at certain times it does feel like they overstep some details to get us to the next scene too.
Yes.
So I would like to spend like maybe a minute or two more somewhere in some places, and then kept the scenes the way they are in others. And
this isn't a spoiler because he was in the trailer. Superman. We'll talk about Superman. What's up?
The way he came back is kind of a spoiler.
That is a spoiler. We won't talk about that.
The way he came back and what he did is a spoiler.
Okay, yes. But I will say that I did like
This is the best Henry Cavill Superman movie ever.
It felt like, because I was going to say, it felt like a little bit more of the real Superman in this, where it didn't feel so much of Snyder's Superman.
Yeah, it felt like Superman, and more so than Snyder's take on a Kryptonian.
Yes.
See, there's a difference there. See, Snyder treated him like a Kryptonian. This movie treated him like Superman.
Right.
And that was important.
Gosh, there's so many more things I want to talk about that I feel like are going to be spoilers.
So we'll save it all for the spoiler review.
We'll move to the negatives now because this is all mostly technical stuff for me.
Oh yeah, I got some story. I got some negative. One big negative.
Go ahead.
Steppenwolf.
Steppenwolf, yes. The CGI disaster piece.
He looked like what Steppenwolf looked like to me the whole time. Every time I saw Steppenwolf on screen. There was a game that came out a long time ago.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. It reminded me of a video game character because that's how he looked.
There was a video game that came out a long time ago called Soul Calibur 2. And there was a mode in there where you get to create your own fighter. He looked like something out of that game.
Yes. He looked like
model and all.
When you see they have like video game characters on the boxes of graphic cards.
Yeah.
He looked like something off of that.
He looked like a generic evil Viking character they would throw in the graphics card box.
Yeah,
exactly. That is an accurate accurate description of the way
Yes.
Steppenwolf described. He looks like a generic villain you would throw in a graphics card box.
Yeah. So, yeah.
We can render him.
Yes. So, with that being said, this also goes in with the positives because this is something that Marvel gets a lot of slack for. Or they have really bad villains, but really great heroes, which is what we got out of this movie.
I disagree with the whole Marvel has bad villains thing.
Well, at least they're passable. We don't actually hate them, but they're nothing spectacular except for like Loki, the ones that stand out like that.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. We have villains that stand out in the Marvel universe, because there's also a theme to all the villains in the Marvel universe where DC villains, they just pull a villain out of a hat.
Well, at the very least, with the Marvel ones, we do get a little bit of emotional attachment to them. We get an understanding of their motivation.
And then the overarching theme to them is, like Vision said in Civil War, our being here invites challenge.
Right.
So it seems as though every villain that's come out against the characters we know has been a result of their doing.
Right.
Like for example, just to give you an example, had Hank Pym not told the character about the Pym particles,
right,
we wouldn't have gotten Yellow Jacket.
Okay.
If Iron Man had he not been cold to Homeboy, left him on the roof, that had he not left what was the Guy Pearce's character's name in Iron Man 3? I know he claimed to be the Mandarin.
Let's call him Guy Pearce's character because he didn't need his name. Yeah, he claimed to be the Mandarin.
He claimed to be the Mandarin, but had he not left his character on the roof that night, he wouldn't have became the man that he became in Iron Man 3.
Right.
All their actions led to their villains being created, and that's a central theme in all the Marvel movies, and I appreciate that thread being tied through all their movies.
Right.
So where with DC, there is no common threaded through all their movies.
See, the only I knew they had to have some sort of supernatural excuse for bringing the Justice League together, but it was such a throwaway.
And the way they introduced they introduced the threat, like they're here.
Right.
They didn't introduce. There was no introduction to these threats in earlier movies. They
kind of hinted at the mother boxes in Batman vs Superman, but that was actually in a deleted scene, wasn't it?
That was in the Ultimate Edition.
Yeah, so you had to watch the Ultimate Edition.
You had to get the Ultimate Edition to get the teasers to this movie, which is not fair.
Right.
They didn't. That's like they do a Thor movie. Don't put Loki in it, and then Loki's the main villain. What? Why?
Right. So
that's like them doing everything they did to get to the Avengers, but not putting Loki anywhere in any of them.
Now there was a lot about this movie that you cannot tell where Joss Whedon was directing or where Zack Snyder was directing, at least from my perspective. But there was one that you definitely knew was Zack Snyder's, and I actually really liked it. Was the opening? There's like an opening. What's the word I'm looking for, man?
Prologue.
Sort of. It was like that opening scene where there was some music playing.
The funeral scene.
Yeah, that was part of it.
The morning scene.
Morning scene, yeah.
The morning of Superman scene.
Yes, the morning of Superman was really cool, and I can tell that was Zack Snyder's doing.
Yeah. The whole showing the world is like colder and darker for it.
Right. So it reminded me so much of like the Watchmen whenever they were playing that Bob Dylan song at the beginning of Watchmen. It reminded me a lot of that, which was really cool because it was like some slow motion parts, some really cool cinematography. I really liked that, and I could tell that was Zack Snyder.
But the CGI flags were fake as
yes,
crap.
As crap. Yes. So that's going back into the negatives, which is the CGI in this movie is absolutely terrible.
Absolutely horrible.
Like some of the skyline you can tell is green screen. You can tell. I mean, that is it's painfully noticeable.
There's one scene where the Flash does something.
Yeah.
And he gets covered in something.
Yep.
You can clearly tell they just splashed that on in post.
Yeah. So
it looked like they literally broke a highlighter on the film reel.
Yes.
It looked that noticeable.
And the parademons being most of the
they were like a very generic looking demon.
That's the one problem. That's the one problem I have with a lot of superhero movies that when you can tell that it ruins the threat because you know that these parademons, there's nothing about them that's threatening. So you know they're just there for the punches and the kicks and stuff, and that's all good and well, but it didn't lead up to anything.
Yeah, the parademons were just cannon fodder.
Right.
The Justice League were the Power Rangers, and they were the Putty Patrol.
Yes, that's a very good comparison. But yeah, I hate that part about the movie. It's the one thing that's going to hold these movies back is if they don't get a decent threat or some actual man.
But going back to the Marvel movies, the biggest threat their biggest threat so far was actually Helmut Zemo.
Right.
And if it wasn't for Black Panther, he would have got away scot-free.
Yeah. And they did this in the Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where they were riding, or they were just blasting away all those little ships and stuff. I forgot what those guys are called, but they from the beginning when they're like chasing the batteries and stuff. But at least that was funny.
Yeah, at least they explained why it was the way it was. It's cannon fodder because to the people flying the ships, it's just a video game.
Yes.
There is no threat to them, so it's just blow them away. We'll just put another one out there.
Right.
We'll just try again on our next life. Died of this.
Then they wanted all of us for some strange reason. Batman said they can just sense fear. I don't know how he figured that out so quickly. But
they didn't really explain
that.
it.
At least that I don't want to spoil it, but that did lead up to something.
That did lead to something, and that was very crucial. And
yes.
And I guess it would make sense that he would know that because his whole thing runs on fear.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that if he's doing something, and then every time does something, they arrive. He's world's greatest detective. He's smart enough to put those two pieces together.
Yeah.
So in a way, I don't like they left that detail out, but I understand why they left that detail out due to the fact that he is Batman.
Yes.
And he was smart enough to figure that out.
Right. And another one actually that I forgot to mention in the positives is Atlantis. Atlantis, it's so cool, and it makes me really excited for Aquaman's movie.
It makes me excited for Aquaman's movie too, like the whole them swimming underwater and all that. But if they want to talk to each other, they just make an air pocket in the water.
Yes. I was curious how that was going to work out because at first, I mean, they do have that underwater muffled sound that's just like, oh boy, is this how Aquaman's going to work out? And then they do have that air bubble around them where they can actually communicate with each other. And I was like, that makes so much sense. And it's really cool. It makes me wonder if James Wan had anything to do with that part of the movie.
Makes me wonder too, is that something that they oversaw and wrote, and Archie's going crazy over there.
Sorry.
That's fine, but anyway, all the areas that they expanded on further looked really cool. It was cool to go back to Themyscira again.
Oh yeah, that was one of the more emotional parts of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was going back to there, which is really cool.
And then the whole even though she's been banished, I was wondering what happened at Themyscira was going to reach Diana. But they handled that real well too.
Right.
But it said by doing what they did and explaining it the way they did, it makes sense that it happened the way it happened.
Yeah. So to go into now that we are in the negatives, see the pacing that I mentioned at the beginning being a positive is a blessing and a curse at the same exact time.
Mm-hmm.
Because this movie could have been 30 to 45 minutes longer, and I wouldn't have minded.
I mean, this is one of those rare times where a long DC movie would have worked.
Yes.
Because since you have so many more characters to play off of, you could have made like mini movies within this movie.
Because I know Warner Brothers was really reactionary to how it was negatively Batman versus Superman was received, and one of the biggest complaints was how long it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the fact that there was no levity.
It was just 2.5 hours of just
doom and gloom and build up for nothing.
Yeah.
And then a cop-out ending.
Yeah. A cop-out ending that they could have saved for something a later movie.
And killing off Superman.
Yeah.
That was really bad. Stupid idea.
Yeah, that was a very... you kill him before you get to your Justice League movie.
Yeah.
Who thought that was smart?
Nobody.
And then you had to write in a way to bring him back, which they do, which we will talk about in the spoiler review, and which is why it's in my negative.
Yes. Yeah. I would agree with that part of it, with how they brought him back.
But once he comes back,
yeah.
But that's all we'll say for now.
Yes. So anything else that you can think of? Really cool post-credit scenes.
The post-credit scenes were pretty cool.
Yeah, we won't talk about them because they're spoilers, but we will say that they were cool.
One was cooler than the other, though.
You talking about the first one? Or the second one was cooler than the other, obviously. What, you disagree? You thought the first one was cooler than the other one?
We'll talk about that in the spoiler review.
Because I'm not going to spoil it, but in my opinion, that second post-credit scene was better than anything DC has ever done. So...
I'll explain why I didn't like that second one.
So you just didn't like the second one. There's nothing particular about that first one that makes it that much cooler. You just didn't like the second one. Okay, I get you now. I'm caught up. I was going to say the first one was okay. It was funny.
Mm-hmm.
But, which brings me into a positive, actually. The Flash, with him being the comedic, what do you call him? Comedic relief.
Comedic relief.
Yes. For him being the comedic relief and he was really funny.
He was actually
most of the jokes landed. There was a couple that probably didn't. But.
He was pretty funny, and he was actually he was a motor mouth, but he was understandable why he was a motor mouth because they didn't make him like a cocky motor mouth.
Right.
They made him like a geeky
nervous.
Yeah. They basically made like the Speed Force like nervous energy for him.
Yes.
Like he's so like him just standing still was like driving him crazy.
Yes.
And I like that little touch on him.
And I really liked how they work. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to say it. How they worked in how he burns so many calories every time he speeds up like that, and how he's like starving and he can eat an entire pizza or something because he's burned so many calories from doing so much from moving so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really cool. Is that something that's in the original Flash story?
Or Flash has to eat all the time. That's just something he has to do because his body burns calories so fast. He pretty much constantly has to eat.
Okay. But and then I also mentioned briefly about how cool Gotham was in this movie.
Mm-hmm. And shout out to J.K. Simmons for as little screen time as he did have. I believed him as Commissioner Gordon.
Right, and also those pictures of him bulking up, that was definitely nothing to do with the movie,
I don't know why they bulked him up like that.
Well, I think he said he's just doing that for his own personal reasons, not for any role. But I thought everybody was thinking, I was like, oh, we're going to have a jacked Commissioner Gordon. He didn't look jacked. He was wearing that big old Commissioner Gordon jacket.
He looked like Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
Which I will give this movie credit for one more thing.
What's up?
This is the closest I've felt to the DC animated universe version of Justice League in a long time.
Yes.
I actually was like, for the first part of the movie, I thought, okay, we're going to get more of this grim dark. Oh, goodness, here we go. But then the movie did something, and then I was like, watch the movie. I'm like, wow. If you were to animate this, it'd be the same thing.
Right.
And I was digging that aspect of it, that it felt like the Justice League I remember all the way back from Batman the Animated Series to the final episode of Justice League Unlimited. That whole run from that show to that show was, to me, the perfect Justice League story. It started with Batman, Superman was introduced, then you had everything else that was introduced in between there, and then you had Batman Beyond and Static Shock and all that, which was all still connected, and then you had Justice League Unlimited that tied all of this packed story together, and then ended it with an homage to the very first scene of Batman the Animated Series. I thought it was beautiful.
Oh yeah.
And then you still had, and even with all of that, you still had your sad moments, you had your happy moments, you had your funny moments. Like there were scenes on the Watchtower where they would just sit and talk, and it would be hilarious. Like Batman having lunch with Green Lantern was the funniest thing on that show one time, because he was talking about Green Lantern's relationships with Hawkgirl and Tigra, and then they tell Batman needs to go out with somebody. He's like, she said, "Baby, what about you and Wonder Woman?" And Batman was talking about all the reasons why he couldn't date Wonder Woman.
Right.
And then he stops and goes, "She's standing right behind me, isn't she?" And it was like, for a second, it was like, we are not in the Watchtower. This is the school cafeteria. but it's just Batman and Green Lantern talking like this, and it's pretty funny. And I feel like this brought me some of that.
Yeah.
So that's a positive.
Yeah. So, I think that's good enough to go
for now.
For now, yeah, because I'm really ready to go into the spoilers and talk about this movie.
So, what's your score for right now?
So, for my score for this movie, I am going to go 7.9 out of 10.
Oh, we're doing 0.9s? I thought we just did half points.
I would normally do just half points, but it's a little better than 75%, but not quite at B- level yet.
I'll have to. I see your 7.9, but I just have to give it a smooth 7.
A smooth 7.
Just a smooth 7.
Wow.
Steppenwolf.
So you're a little younger, a little lower than me. Okay.
Yeah, Steppenwolf really didn't do nothing for me. He was just your generic villain who did nothing, and they did the one job and they didn't even do the one job his character was supposed to do. Lead to the bigger threat.
Okay. Yeah.
He was just there to just cause trouble for 2 hours and then leave.
So I'm probably grading this on a curve. That might be what it is.
You're grading it on the curve that this actually is the first DC movie you didn't leave upset.
Well, besides Wonder Woman.
Wonder
Woman.
Yeah,
Wonder Woman was a solid B+ for me.
I'll give Wonder Woman like an 8.5.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, 7.9 I felt like is fair. And 7 is understandable, especially if you're a DC fan like you are. I'm a DC fan too, but not quite to the level you are.
Yeah, I like DC in certain aspects of them, and these movies are slowly getting to the aspects of DC I like.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to when we will be moving away, because I'm pretty sure we're going to have a very clean shift away from the Snyderverse, and I will be fine with that.
Yeah.
No offense to Zack Snyder.
Yeah, Dan Snyder owns the Redskins.
Yes. To Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
No offense to Zack Snyder. He put himself in a hole.
He dug himself a hole and he couldn't like Viola Davis said, it's a Suicide Squad. We threw the movie in the hole and we forgot the hole.
Yes. So this was a good way. This was a good shift out of that hole, and now we'll hopefully be completely out of the hole with these next couple movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's our review for the Justice League, guys. Due to the